The envelope sits on the marble counter between us. Vivian's fingers shake as she pulls out the papers, and I watch the color drain from her face like water circling a drain. Her skin goes from its usual peachy glow to something closer to ash. The paper trembles in her grip. What is this? Her voice cracks on the last word. I fold my hands in my lap, calm as Sunday morning. A lease agreement and a rent notice. Her eyes snap to mine, wide and glassy. Rent notice? $4,200 per month. Starting December 1st. Fair market value for a house this size in this neighborhood. She's reading now, her lips moving slightly as her eyes scan the legal text. I can see the exact moment understanding hits because her whole body goes rigid. The paper slips from her hand and floats to the floor like a white flag of surrender. You can't do this. She's whispering, but there's venom underneath. I already have. Her mouth opens and closes, opens again. This is our house. Preston and I, we bought this. With my money. I keep my voice soft, gentle even. It makes the words cut deeper. 3 years ago, when you were facing foreclosure, I paid off your mortgage. All $380,000 of it. The deed transferred to me as collateral. This house belongs to me, Vivian. It always has. If you've ever been treated like a burden by family you've sacrificed everything for, you know exactly how I felt 3 nights ago at dinner. You know that moment when someone shows you who they really are, and you finally stop making excuses for them. Stay with me, because what happened at that dinner table changed everything. Hi, viewers. Kindly tell us where you're watching from and what time it is. Vivian's breathing comes faster now, shallow and quick. She backs up until her spine hits the refrigerator. Preston will never agree to this. I stand slowly, my hip still aching some from that fall 10 months ago. The fall that brought me to this house in the first place. Preston signed the papers himself, 3 years ago. He knows exactly who owns this house. Her face does something complicated then. Shock melting into rage, rage mixing with fear, fear drowning in disbelief. You're lying. Call him. I gesture to her phone on the counter. Ask him about the paperwork he signed when I paid off your mortgage. Ask him about the deed transfer. Ask him why he never told you. She doesn't move for the phone. She just stares at me like I've grown a second head. Like the quiet old woman who spent the last 10 months making herself invisible has suddenly become a stranger. 3 nights ago, we sat at this very table. Vivian's sister Margot was here with her husband Hugh. They were drinking wine that cost more per bottle than I spend on groceries in a week. Vivian was holding court, talking about success and knowing your worth and not letting people take advantage of your generosity. Margot laughed at something Vivian said, then turned her eyes to me. Unlike some people, right, Viv? You're so generous letting Adelaide stay here. Preston didn't look up from his phone. Hugh coughed into his napkin. And Vivian smiled that smile of hers, the one that shows too many teeth. She looked right at me. You're lucky we let you stay here for free, Adelaide. Most people your age are paying thousands a month for assisted living. The table went quiet. I could hear the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of a car passing on the street outside. My water glass was cold and slick with condensation under my fingers. Lucky, free, as if I was charity. As if I hadn't given them nearly $200,000 in loans they never repaid. As if I didn't own the ground they stood on. I smiled then, a small smile, but it came from somewhere deep. Somewhere Walter taught me about years ago, before he died. You're absolutely right, Vivian. I am very lucky. She looked confused by my agreement. She'd wanted tears or anger, not calm acceptance. It unsettled her, though she didn't know why. Now, standing in this kitchen with the rent notice on the floor between us, I see that same confusion on her face. But there's something else there, too. Understanding, finally. The slow, horrible realization that she's miscalculated. I'll call a lawyer, she says. Her voice is steadier now, harder. You can't just kick us out. I'm not kicking you out. I pick up the lease agreement from where it fell. I'm offering you a lease. You can sign it and pay rent like any other tenant, or you can buy the house from me at fair market value. Or, I pause, letting the words hang. You can find somewhere else to live. Her jaw clenches. Preston will fix this. Preston can't fix what he signed away 3 years ago. She pushes past me, her shoulder knocking mine hard enough to hurt. I hear her footsteps pounding up the stairs, hear a door slam on these. Then her voice, muffled but shrill, talking fast into her phone. I lower myself into a kitchen chair, my hands steady even though my heart is racing. The morning sun slants through the window, catching dust motes in the air. Everything looks the same as it did an hour ago, but everything has changed. My phone buzzes in my pocket. Bernard, my lawyer, I sent him a message before I came downstairs this morning, letting him know I was serving the papers. How'd she take it? He asks when I answer. About as well as expected. He chuckles low and dry. Adelaide Hartwell, you're full of surprises. After 73 years of being kind, you've finally learned to bite back. Walter always said kindness isn't weakness. I watch the dust dance in the sunlight. I'm just remembering that dignity has teeth too. Upstairs, Vivian's voice rises and falls. I can't make out the words, but I don't need to. She's telling Preston that his mother has lost her mind, that I'm being unreasonable, vindictive, cruel. She's probably crying, using that same tearful voice she used when she convinced him to ask me for money the first time, the second time, the third time. But what she doesn't know, what she's about to learn, is that Preston remembers signing those papers. He might have been distracted, stressed, barely reading the fine print, but somewhere in his mind he knows the truth. And when he comes home tonight, he'll have to choose whose side he's on. I look around this kitchen with its marble counters and stainless steel appliances. Everything is expensive, tasteful, perfect. I paid for all of it without knowing. Every tile, every light fixture, every throw pillow in the living room came from money I gave them thinking I was helping my son through hard times. Hard times they created by living beyond their means. The coffee maker gurgles, finishing the pot I'd started before Vivian came downstairs. I pour myself a cup, add cream, no sugar. Walter always took his black, but I like mine softer. I sit back down at the table and wait for what comes next, because something is coming. My name is Adelaide Hartwell. I'm 73 years old, and for most of my life, I believed that if you worked hard and treated people right, the universe would return the favor. Walter taught me that. Or maybe I taught him. After 50 years of marriage, it's hard to remember who believed what first. We met at a church social when I was 21 and he was 23, so he had carpenter's hands, rough and calloused, with sawdust under his nails that never quite came clean. But when he touched my face that first time, his fingers were gentle. You've got kind eyes, he said. That's rare. 3 months later, we were married. His family thought we were rushing. Mine thought he didn't make enough money. But Walter and I knew something they didn't. We knew how to build things that lasted. The first thing we built was our house. Walter's father had left him a small plot of land on the edge of town, nothing fancy. Just dirt and possibility. We saved every penny from his carpentry jobs and my work at the telephone company. We drew plans on napkins at the kitchen table of our tiny apartment. And then, board by board, nail by nail, we built our home. I can still smell the fresh-cut lumber, feel the splinters in my palms from helping Walter carry 2x4s. We worked weekends and evenings, sometimes by flashlight when the sun went down too early. It took us 2 years, but when we finally moved in, every wall meant something. Every corner held a memory of our sweat and laughter. Walter's business grew, not fast, but steady. He was honest, showed up on time, did good work, people noticed. One job led to another and another. By the time our son Preston was born, we'd saved enough to buy our second property, a small apartment building with 4 units. Walter fixed it up himself, turned it from rundown to livable. Land is the one thing they're not making more of, Addie, he told me while we painted the hallway of that apartment building. Preston was sleeping in a basket at our feet, just 6 months old. Hold on to it, and it'll hold on to you. We rented out those apartments, used the income to buy a commercial space downtown, rented that too. We drove old cars and wore clothes until they wore out. We didn't take vacations or eat at fancy restaurants, But every month, money went into savings, into investments, into security. By the time Preston was in high school, we owned 3 properties outright and had a retirement fund that would keep us comfortable. But you'd never know it to look at us. Walter still wore his work boots until they had holes. I still cut coupons and bought store brands. Why don't we ever do anything nice? Preston asked once when he was 16. His friend's parents had just come back from Hawaii, and he wanted to know why we never went anywhere. Walter looked at him across the dinner table. Nice is a car that breaks down in 5 years. Nice is a vacation you remember for a month. What we're building lasts forever. Someday you'll understand. Preston didn't understand. Not then. Maybe not ever. Walter died on a Tuesday morning 15 years ago. He was 68 years old, still working because he loved it, not because he needed to. He was fixing Mrs. Kowalski's fence for free because she was a widow on a fixed income and couldn't afford repairs. His heart just stopped. One moment he was hammering a board into place, and the next moment he was gone. The funeral was small. Walter hadn't been a man who needed attention, but everyone who came had a story about something he'd built for them, some kindness he'd shown. Mrs. Kowalski cried so hard she couldn't speak. After everyone left, Bernard Hastings, our lawyer, sat with me in the living room of the house Walter built. He had a folder thick with documents. Walter was very specific about how he wanted things structured, Bernard said. His voice was gentle but firm. Everything, the house, the properties, the savings, it's all in your name alone, not joint assets, just yours. I nodded, not really understanding why it mattered. Bernard leaned forward. Adelaide, Walter loved Preston, but he was worried. He said, and these are his words, that Preston didn't understand the value of things, that he spent too easily and saved too little. Walter wanted to make sure you were protected. Protected from what? Bernard's eyes were sad. From anyone who might try to take advantage of your generous nature. At the time, I thought Walter was being paranoid. Preston was our son, Maetiena. He'd been raised to understand hard work and careful planning. But as Bernard walked me through the paperwork, the trusts, the deed transfers, I saw how thoroughly Walter had protected everything we'd built. No one can touch these assets without your permission, Bernard explained. Not creditors, not family members, not anyone. You're the sole owner with complete control. I signed where he told me to sign, put the papers in a safe deposit box at the bank, and then I went back to living my life, certain I'd never need any of it. 3 years after Walter died, Preston brought a woman named Vivian to Sunday dinner. She wore heels that clicked on the hardwood floors Walter had laid, and her laugh sounded like wind chimes in a storm. Too bright, too hollow. But Preston looked at her like she hung the moon, so I smiled and set an extra place at the table. That was my first mistake. I should have listened to the small voice in the back of my mind, the one that sounded a lot like Walter saying, "Watch carefully, Addie. Watch what people do, not what they say." But I wanted Preston to be happy. I wanted him to have what Walter and I had, a partner, a teammate, someone to build a life with. So I ignored the warning signs and welcomed Vivian into our family. I didn't know yet that she'd already started planning how to take everything Walter and I had spent 50 years building. I didn't know that within 5 years, I'd be living in a house I owned while being treated like an unwanted guest. I didn't know that kindness could be mistaken for weakness or that love could be used as a weapon. But I was about to learn. Preston was 42 when he met Vivian Caldwell at an insurance conference in Chicago. He called me from his hotel room, voice bright with excitement I hadn't heard since he was a teenager, talking about his first car. "Mom, I met someone. She's incredible. Smart, successful, beautiful. She works in pharmaceutical sales, travels all over the country. We talked for 3 hours straight at the networking dinner." I smiled into the phone, happiness swelling in my chest. "That's wonderful, honey. What's her name?" "Vivian. Vivian Caldwell. She's from Connecticut originally, but lives here in town now. Can you believe that? We've been living in the same city and never met until now." They dated for 2 months before he brought her to meet me. I cleaned the house top to bottom, made a roast with all the fixings, baked an apple pie from scratch using Walter's mother's recipe. I wanted to make a good impression, wanted Vivian to feel welcome. She arrived wearing a cream-colored dress that probably cost more than my monthly grocery budget. Her hair was perfect, smooth and dark, pulled back in a way that made her cheekbones look sharp. When she shook my hand, her grip was firm but brief, like she was checking a box on a list. "It's so nice to finally meet you, Mrs. Hartwell." Her smile showed all her teeth. "Preston has told me so much about you. Please, call me Adelaide." Come in, dinner's almost ready." We sat in my living room making small talk while Preston excused himself to take a work call. Vivian's eyes moved around the room, taking in the worn but comfortable furniture, the family photos on the mantel, the braided rug Walter's mother had made. I couldn't read her expression, but something about the way she looked at things made me feel small. "Preston mentioned you own several properties," she said, crossing her legs. "That's impressive for someone your age. Most people your generation just have their pension and Social Security." "My husband was good with money. We saved carefully." "And it's all yours now? He left everything to you?" The question felt invasive, too personal for a first meeting, but I chalked it up to her being in sales, used to asking direct questions. "Yes, we built everything together, but legally, it's in my name." Something flickered in her eyes. Interest, maybe, or calculation. "That must be a lot to manage on your own." "I have a good lawyer. He helps me with the complicated parts." Preston came back then, apologizing for the interruption, and we moved to the dining room. Dinner was polite but stiff. Vivian picked at her food, complimenting it in a way that somehow felt like criticism. "This is so hearty. You really don't worry about calories at your age, do you?" Preston laughed. "Mom's always been a great cook. I grew up eating like this." "I can tell," Vivian said, patting his stomach in a way that made him flinch. After they left, I stood at my kitchen sink washing dishes and trying to shake the uneasy feeling that had settled in my chest. I told myself I was being unfair, that first impressions weren't always accurate. Vivian was probably nervous, trying too hard to impress. Give her time, I thought. Give her a chance. 6 months later, they were engaged. Preston called with the news, breathless and happy. "We're getting married, Mom. In 3 months, Vivian wants a spring wedding." 3 months. Barely enough time to plan anything substantial. But I kept my concerns to myself and asked what I could do to help. "Just show up and be happy for us," Preston said. That's all we need." The wedding was at a country club I'd never heard of, an hour outside the city. The ceremony was elegant in a cold sort of way. White flowers everywhere, a string quartet, chairs with silk ribbons. I wore my best dress, the navy blue one I'd bought for Walter's cousin's funeral, and tried not to feel out of place among Vivian's family and friends in their designer clothes. Vivian's mother, Constance, was a tall woman with silver hair and a face that looked like it had forgotten how to smile. Her sister Margot was a younger, sharper version of Vivian, all angles and edges. They acknowledged me with brief nods when Preston introduced us, then immediately turned away to talk to people they deemed more important. During the reception, I sat at a table with some of Preston's work colleagues. Vivian had created the seating chart, and I noticed all the family tables were on the opposite side of the room. When Preston and Vivian did their rounds greeting guests, they spent 30 seconds at my table. "Thanks for coming, Mom," Preston said, kissing my cheek quickly before Vivian pulled him toward the next table. I watched them dance their first dance, watched Vivian throw her bouquet, watched them cut a 5-tiered cake that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage payment used to be. And I tried to be happy for my son, I really did. But something Walter used to say kept running through my mind. "Watch what people do, Addie. Words are easy. Actions tell the truth." Vivian's actions told me she saw people as useful or useless. And from the way she'd arranged that seating chart, from the way she'd barely acknowledged me all day, I was starting to suspect which category I fell into. The calls from Preston became less frequent after the wedding. Once a week became every other week, then once a month. When I tried to call him, he was always busy, always in a meeting, always promising to call back later. Later rarely came. I told myself it was normal. Newlyweds needed time to adjust to their life together. He wasn't abandoning me, he was just starting a new chapter. But late at night, lying in the bed I used to share with Walter, I felt the distance growing like a crack in a foundation. Small at first, then wider, then impossible to ignore. And then, 6 months after the wedding, Preston called asking for money. That's when I realized Vivian hadn't just married my son. She'd identified a resource, and she was about to start extracting everything she could from it. The first call came on a Wednesday evening. I was making dinner, just chicken and vegetables, nothing fancy, when my phone rang. Preston's name on the screen made me smile. It had been almost 3 weeks since we'd talked. "Hey, Mom." His voice sounded tight, strained. "Do you have a minute?" "Of course, what's wrong?" He sighed, long and heavy. "We're in a situation. Vivian's company is restructuring. They're letting people go, and her position isn't secure. We've been living on both our salaries, and if she loses her job..." He trailed off. "What do you need?" I turned off the stove, my appetite suddenly gone. "We're behind on some bills. The mortgage is high, and with just my income, we can't cover everything. I know it's a lot to ask, but could you loan us some money? Just until Vivian finds another position. She's already interviewing." "How much are we talking about?" There was a pause. 20,000. I felt the number like a punch. $20,000 was more money than Walter and I used to make in a year when we first started out. But I had it. The properties brought in rental income, and I'd been saving for decades. "Okay," I heard myself say, I can do that." "Really?" Relief flooded his voice. "Mom, you're a lifesaver. We'll pay you back, I promise, within the year." "I know you will, honey. I'll transfer it tomorrow." "Thank you, Mom. Thank you so much." "I love you." "I love you too." After we hung up, I sat at my kitchen table with my cooling dinner and told myself I was doing the right thing. Parents help their children. That's what family does. The money would help Preston and Vivian get through a rough patch, and they'd pay me back like Preston promised. I transferred the money the next morning. Preston sent a text. "Got it. You saved us. Can't thank you enough." Months passed. Vivian found a new job, according to Preston's brief phone updates. Things were looking up. They were getting back on track. But the year came and went, and nobody mentioned paying me back. I didn't bring it up either. It felt petty to ask, like I didn't trust my own son. 18 months after the first loan, Preston called again. This time it was about Vivian's mother. She had some medical issues. Tests, procedures, you know how it is with insurance. They're drowning in bills, and Vivian wants to help, but we're stretched thin ourselves. "How much?" 30,000. I closed my eyes. "Preston, you haven't paid back the first 20. "I know, Mom, I know. We've been meaning to talk to you about that. Things have just been tight. But once we get through this rough patch, we'll pay back everything, I swear." Rough patch, as if financial irresponsibility was weather that would pass. But he was my son, and Vivian's mother was sick, and what kind of person says no to medical bills? "Okay," I said quietly, "I'll transfer it. You're the best, Mom, seriously, but we'd be lost without you." I wanted to tell him that I wasn't a bank, that loans implied repayment, that I'd worked hard for this money, that Walter and I had sacrificed for decades to build this security. But I couldn't find the words that wouldn't sound selfish, so I transferred the money and said nothing. The third request wasn't even framed as a loan. Preston called on a Sunday morning, and I could hear Vivian's voice in the background, sharp and insistent. "Mom, we need help. We're underwater. The bills are crushing us. Can you help?" "How much this time?" 45,000. My stomach dropped. Preston, that's a lot of money." "I know, God, I know, but we don't have anywhere else to turn. You're the only person who can help us." Vivian's voice got louder in the background. Is she saying no? After everything we've done for her? Everything they'd done for me? I'd seen them maybe 5 times in the 3 years they'd been married. Brief visits where they stayed for an hour, refused my offers of food, and left as quickly as possible. What exactly had they done for me? But Preston sounded desperate, scared even. And despite everything, he was still my son. Still the little boy I'd raised, the teenager I'd helped with homework, the young man I'd hugged at his father's funeral. I'll transfer it, I said. But Preston, this can't keep happening. I can't keep giving you money forever. We know, Mom. This is the last time. I promise. Once we get things sorted out, we'll start paying you back. All of it. I hung up and sat in Walter's old recliner, the one I'd kept even though the fabric was worn and the stuffing was coming out of one arm. I thought about calling Bernard, my lawyer, asking his advice. But I already knew what he'd say. He'd tell me I was being taken advantage of, that Preston and Vivian were treating me like an ATM machine, that I needed to stop enabling them. And he'd be right. But I transferred the money anyway. $95,000 total. Nearly 6 figures gone from the accounts Walter and I had built over 50 years of careful planning and sacrifice. I told myself it was an investment in Preston's future. That every parent makes sacrifices for their children. That money was just money, but family was forever. What I didn't know was that while I was eating chicken and vegetables and wearing clothes until they wore out, Vivian was posting photos on social media. Designer handbags that cost $3,000, a vacation to Tuscany, 10 days in luxury hotels and Michelin-starred restaurants, a new luxury sedan parked in their driveway, gleaming black with chrome accents. I didn't see those posts. I barely use social media. But Bernard saw them. Bernard, who'd promised Walter he'd watch out for me, who checked on me every few months to make sure I was okay. He called me on a Tuesday afternoon. Adelaide, we need to talk. About what? About the money you've been giving Preston. My chest tightened. How do you know about that? I monitor your accounts. It's part of how I make sure everything stays organized for tax purposes. You've transferred nearly $100,000 to him in the past 3 years. He needed help. Times have been difficult for them. Have they? Bernard's voice was gentle but firm. Because Vivian Caldwell just posted pictures from Italy, and she's carrying a handbag that costs more than most people make in a month. Does that look like someone struggling financially? I didn't answer. Couldn't answer. Because suddenly all the pieces were falling into place, forming a picture I didn't want to see. Adelaide, they're taking advantage of you, Bernard said. Preston might not even realize how bad it is, but Vivian is using you as a piggy bank to fund a lifestyle they can't afford. Preston wouldn't do that. I hope you're right. Bernard sighed. But I'm worried about you. Promise me you'll think carefully before you give them any more money. I promise. But promises are easy when you're not being tested. And I didn't know yet that the biggest test was still coming. That within a year, I'd be living under their roof, treated like a burden, about to learn exactly how little family meant when money was involved. The ice was black and slick under my feet. I didn't even see it until I was already falling, my hip hitting the concrete driveway with a crack that sounded like a branch breaking. The pain was immediate and blinding, stealing my breath, making the world narrow to a pinpoint of white-hot agony. I tried to stand, but my leg wouldn't work right. Everything below my waist felt disconnected, wrong. I managed to pull my phone from my coat pocket with shaking hands and dial 911. I've fallen, I told the dispatcher. My voice sounded far away, like it belonged to someone else. I think something's broken. The ambulance came, the hospital. Surgery. They put a titanium rod in my hip, screws to hold everything together. The surgeon was young and optimistic, told me I'd be good as new in a few months with proper physical therapy. But recovery was brutal. I couldn't manage the stairs to my bedroom. Couldn't cook for myself without standing too long and feeling the pain radiate through my whole body. Couldn't drive. Couldn't do laundry. Couldn't do any of the small, basic tasks that make up a life. Preston came to visit me in the hospital on the 3rd day. Vivian was with him, wearing a concerned expression that didn't quite reach her eyes. Mom, oh my God. Preston grabbed my hand. Are you okay? Why didn't you call me right away? I didn't want to worry you. It's just a broken hip. I'll be fine. Vivian stood at the foot of my bed, arms crossed. How are you going to manage at home? Your house has stairs. Your bedroom is on the second floor. I'll figure something out. Maybe hire someone to help for a few weeks. That's expensive. Vivian glanced at Preston. And unreliable. You can't trust just anyone in your home. Preston squeezed my hand. Mom, we've been talking. You can't go back to that house alone. It's not safe. What if you fall again and nobody finds you for hours? The thought had already occurred to me lying awake in the hospital at 3 in the morning. I lived alone. My nearest neighbor was Mrs. Chen, who was 86 and half deaf. If I fell again, how long would I lie there before someone found me? We have that extra bedroom, Vivian said. Her voice was syrupy sweet, like artificial honey. You could stay with us while you recover. We'd love to have you. Love. The word felt wrong coming from her mouth, but Preston was nodding, looking hopeful. Just until I'm back on my feet, I said weakly. Of course, Vivian agreed. Just until you're better. Preston arranged everything. Bernard came to the hospital with papers for me to sign, giving Preston temporary access to handle my mail and bills while I recovered. His face was tight with concern. Are you sure about this? He asked quietly. Moving in with them? It's temporary. I don't have much choice. You could hire live-in help. I could find someone trustworthy. Preston's my son. He wants to take care of me. That's a good thing, isn't it? Bernard didn't answer right away. Just promise me you'll call if you need anything. Anything at all. I promised, not knowing how much I'd need that promise later. They picked me up from the hospital on a gray Friday afternoon. Preston helped me into their car, careful with my walker, patient as I moved slowly. The drive to their house took 20 minutes through streets I barely recognized. They'd moved since the wedding to a bigger place in a newer development. When we pulled into the driveway, I stared. Their house was enormous. 2 stories, brick facade, huge windows, a 3-car garage. Professional landscaping, even in late autumn. Everything about it screamed money. Money I'd given them, I realized with a sick feeling. Welcome home, Mom, Preston said, helping me out of the car. Inside was even more impressive. The foyer had marble floors and a crystal chandelier. The living room had furniture that looked like it came from magazines, all clean lines and expensive fabric. The kitchen had granite countertops, stainless steel appliances, a wine fridge built into the island. Your room is on the first floor, Vivian said, leading me down a hallway. We converted the den so you wouldn't have to do stairs. The room was small, painted beige, furnished with pieces that didn't match the rest of the house. A bed with a thin mattress, a dresser with chipped corners, a chair with faded upholstery, like an afterthought, like something purchased at a thrift store because it was cheap and good enough. It's perfect, I lied. Thank you. We'll let you rest, Preston said. Dinner's at 6. Just come out when you're ready. They left me alone in the beige room. I sat on the edge of the bed, my hip throbbing despite the pain medication, and looked around at my temporary home. Through the thin walls, I could hear Vivian's voice in the kitchen. How long is she staying? Until she can manage on her own. Preston sounded defensive. She broke her hip, Viv. She needs help. I know, I'm just asking. But there was something in her tone that made it not just a question. Made it sound like I was already overstaying my welcome on my first day here. I lay back on the thin mattress and stared at the ceiling. This was temporary, I told myself. A few months of recovery, physical therapy, getting my strength back. Then I'd return to my house, my life, my independence. I didn't know yet that Vivian had no intention of letting me leave. That my injury had given her exactly what she'd been waiting for, a way to keep me close, but buzz, keep control, and eventually get her hands on everything I owned. I didn't know that the beige room would become a cage, and that by the time I realized it, the bars would already be locked. But I would learn. And when I did, I'd remember something Walter told me once. The quietest people aren't weak, Addie. They're just watching, waiting. choosing their moment. My moment was coming. I just didn't know it yet. The first month felt like being wrapped in cotton wool. Vivian brought me tea in the mornings, fluffed my pillows, asked if I needed anything. Preston checked on me before work and after, his face creased with genuine concern. I told myself this was good, that family was supposed to take care of each other. By the second month, the cotton wool started to feel more like a straitjacket. Adelaide, could you not leave your books in the living room? Vivian's voice was sharp, no longer sweet. This is our home. We like things neat. I was reading on the couch, my walker parked beside me. The book was on the coffee table, not thrown on the floor, but I apologized anyway. Picked it up, took it back to my beige room. Do you really need the television so loud? She asked another evening. Preston has a headache. The volume was on 12, barely audible. But I turned it down to 8, straining to hear, and told myself I was being considerate. The comments came daily now. Small cuts, paper thin but constant. My shower took too long. My walker was always in the way. Could I please not use so much toilet paper because it was expensive? Did I have to eat so much at dinner when they were trying to watch their budget? Budget. While Viviani's sister Margot came over 3 times a week and they drank wine that cost $40 a bottle. I made myself smaller, quieter. I stayed in my room unless I needed to use the bathroom or eat. I started skipping meals, telling them I wasn't hungry, eating crackers I kept hidden in my dresser drawer like a child hoarding candy. Preston stopped eating dinner with us. Work is crazy, he'd say, kissing Vivian's cheek and heading to his home office with a plate. Leaving me alone with her across the table, the silence heavy and hostile. Margot started visiting when Preston wasn't home. She and Vivian would sit in the kitchen, voices loud enough for me to hear through my closed door. How much longer is she staying? Who knows? She's milking this injury for all it's worth. You're basically running a nursing home. They'd laugh, high and bright and cruel. I'd sit on my bed, hands folded in my lap, and feel myself disappearing. Becoming invisible. A burden. An inconvenience. Everything I'd sworn I'd never be. My physical therapist came twice a week. Her name was Keisha, a young woman with warm eyes and strong hands. She noticed things. You're not progressing as fast as you should, she said during one session. Are you doing your exercises between our appointments? I try. Adelaide. She sat beside me on the bed. What's going on? You seem defeated. I wanted to tell her, wanted to explain that I felt like I was suffocating, that every day I woke up feeling more trapped, that I didn't know how to leave when I could barely walk and had nowhere else to go. But the words stuck in my throat. I'm just tired, I said instead. She didn't believe me. I could see it in her face. But she didn't push, just helped me through the exercises and told me to call if I needed anything. After she left, I sat in the beige room and thought about my house. The house Walter and I built with our own hands. Was someone checking on it, making sure the pipes didn't freeze? Collecting the mail? I called Bernard. How's my house? I've been stopping by once a week. Everything looks fine. Do you want me to arrange for more regular maintenance? Yes, please. Adelaide. His voice gentled. How are you doing, really? I looked at my closed door, heard Vivian's voice in the kitchen on the phone with someone, complaining about her day. I'm fine. You don't sound fine. I broke my hip, Bernard. Nobody feels fine after that. He was quiet for a moment. The offer still stands. I can arrange for professional care at your house. You don't have to stay there. I know. But I did have to stay. Because leaving felt like admitting defeat, like proving I couldn't manage on my own, like being the burden Vivian already thought I was. 3 months in, I overheard a conversation that changed something inside me. Vivian was on the phone in the living room. I was in my room with the door cracked, trying to get some air circulation because the room was stuffy and small. I know, Mother. It's exhausting. She just sits there all day taking up space, and Preston feels guilty, so he won't talk about her leaving. A pause. No, she hasn't offered to pay rent or anything, just expects to live here for free while we wait on her hand and foot. Free, that word again. I'd given them $95,000. I'd paid off their mortgage, though they didn't know I knew the full extent of that yet. And I was living free in a room with secondhand furniture, eating crackers from my dresser, and apologizing for existing. Something cold and clear settled in my chest. Not anger. Anger was hot and messy. This was different. This was knowing. I called Bernard again that night after everyone was asleep. I need to see the paperwork. All of it. Everything related to Preston's house. Why? Just humor me. He came the next day while Vivian was out shopping and Preston was at work. Spread the papers across my bed, showed me the deed, the transfer documents, the mortgage payoff receipt. You own this house, he confirmed. It's been in your name for 3 years. They live here at your discretion. Does Preston know? He signed the papers. Whether he read them carefully or explained them to Vivian, I can't say. I looked at the documents for a long time. Saw Walter's foresight in every clause, every protection he'd built into our estate planning. He'd known. Somehow he'd known I'd need this. I want to assert my property rights, I said quietly. Bernard's eyebrows rose. Meaning? I want to rent them the house. Fair market value. A proper lease agreement. He stared at me for a long moment. Then a slow smile spread across his face. Adelaide Hartwell. I've been waiting years to hear you say something like that. Can you draft the papers? I'll have them ready in 3 days. After he left, I sat in the beige room and felt something I hadn't felt in months. Power, control. The knowledge that I wasn't helpless, wasn't a burden, wasn't living here for free. I was the landlord, and it was time they knew it. Friday evening arrived with the smell of roasted chicken and rosemary. Vivian had been cooking all afternoon, humming to herself, setting the dining room table with the good china. She'd invited Margot and her husband Hugh, and the house buzzed with the energy of company coming. I stayed in my room until Vivian knocked. Dinner's ready. We're eating in 15 minutes. The dining room glowed with candlelight. The table held more food than 4 people could eat. Roasted chicken, glazed carrots, mashed potatoes, some kind of fancy salad with nuts and cranberries. 2 bottles of wine stood open, red and breathing. Margot and Hugh were already seated. Margot looked like a sharper version of Vivian, all angles and expensive highlights. Hugh was thick around the middle, balding, the kind of man who talked loudly about things he only half understood. Adelaide, Margot's smile was thin. How nice to see you up and about. My hip is healing well. I took my usual seat at the end of the table, the one farthest from everyone else. Preston sat at the head, phone in his hand, thumb scrolling. He barely looked up when I sat down. Hugh launched into a story about a property he'd just sold, some mansion on the lake that went for twice the asking price. The market is insane right now. People are throwing money at real estate. If you own property, you're sitting on gold. Some of us are smart like that, Margot said, reaching for her wine glass. We bought our house at exactly the right time. Vivian carved the chicken with theatrical precision. It's all about timing and knowing your worth. You can't let people take advantage of your generosity. Something in the way she said it made my spine straighten. This felt rehearsed, performed. Margot laughed, sharp and bright. Unlike some people, right, Viv? You're so generous, letting Adelaide stay here. The table went quiet. Not naturally, artificially, like everyone was waiting for something. Preston's thumb kept scrolling. He didn't look up. Hugh coughed into his napkin, uncomfortable. Vivian set down the carving knife and turned to me. Her eyes glittered in the candlelight, cold and bright like glass. You're lucky we let you stay here for free, Adelaide. Most people your age are paying thousands a month for assisted living. The words landed like stones dropping into still water. each one sending ripples outward, changing everything. Lucky, free, people your age. I could feel them watching me, waiting for tears, waiting for me to apologize for existing, waiting for me to make myself even smaller than I already was. My water glass was cold under my fingers. Condensation made it slippery. The candles flickered. Somewhere in the house, the refrigerator hummed. I thought about Walter, about the way he'd hold my hand when we walked, his rough carpenter's fingers intertwined with mine, about the house we built together, board by board, about his insistence that everything be in my name, protected, secure, about the deed to this house. This beautiful, expensive house with its marble floors and crystal chandelier, the deed that sat in a safe deposit box with my name on it. Only my name. I smiled, small and calm and knowing. You're absolutely right, Vivian. I am very lucky. Her face flickered with confusion. She'd expected something else. Anger, hurt, defensiveness. My agreement threw her off balance. I'm glad you understand, she said slowly, uncertain. Oh, I understand perfectly. I took a sip of water, set the glass down with careful precision. I understand more than you know. Preston finally looked up from his phone. Mom? It's fine, sweetheart. Okay. Vivian is absolutely right. I should be grateful. I stood, my walker scraping against the hardwood floor. If you'll excuse me, I'm not very hungry. You all enjoy your dinner. I walked back to my room with slow, steady steps. Behind me, I heard Margot whisper something, heard Vivian's responding murmur, heard Hugh clear his throat again, that nervous sound men make when they sense conflict but don't want to address it. In the beige room, I sat on the edge of my bed in the dark and felt the last piece of something fall into place. Not anger, not hurt, just absolute crystalline clarity. For 10 months, I'd made myself small. I'd apologized for taking up space in a house I owned. I'd hidden crackers in my dresser and turned down the television and felt grateful for scraps of basic human decency. But I was done being small, done being grateful, done pretending that kindness meant letting people walk all over me. I picked up my phone and texted Bernard. 3 words, draft the papers. His response came 30 seconds later. Already done. I'll bring them tomorrow. I lay back on the thin mattress and stared at the ceiling. Somewhere in the dining room, Vivian was probably telling Margot and Hugh about how difficult I was, how ungrateful, how exhausting. Let her talk, let her plan, let her think she'd won, because in 72 hours I was going to walk into that kitchen and hand her an envelope that would change everything. And when she opened it, when her face went white and her hands started shaking, when she realized that the helpless old woman she'd been humiliating was actually the owner of everything she thought she possessed, I was going to smile again. That same small, calm, knowing smile. The smile that meant the quiet reckoning had finally begun. Saturday morning came gray and cold. I woke before dawn, my hip aching the way it always did when the weather changed. Through my thin walls, I heard the house settling, pipes creaking, the distant sound of Preston's alarm going off. I thought about Thursday, about Bernard's visit, about the papers spread across my bed like evidence in a trial. The house purchase happened 5 years ago, before Vivian and Preston were even married. Preston had called me from the real estate office, voice tight with stress. Mom, we found a house. It's perfect, big enough for a family, good neighborhood, great schools nearby, but the mortgage terms are brutal. How brutal? 7% interest. The bank says it's because my credit score took a hit from some late payments. I didn't realize Vivian had maxed out her cards, but we can make it work if we're careful. Careful, a word that meant nothing to people who bought designer handbags and took vacations to Italy. 2 years passed. Then Preston called again, his voice different this time, scared. Mom, the bank sent a foreclosure notice. We're 3 months behind on the mortgage. With penalties and fees, we owe almost $15,000 immediately or we lose the house. How did it get this bad? I don't know. I thought Vivian was handling the mortgage payments and she thought I was. Things got confused then. But Mom, we're going to lose everything. I could hear Vivian crying in the background. Real tears or performed ones, I couldn't tell through the phone. How much is left on the mortgage? I asked. Silence, then was 380,000. The number stole my breath. It was more than Walter and I had paid for all three of our properties combined. Preston, that's. I know it's a lot. But what are we supposed to do? Where would we live? We'd lose our down payment, our equity, everything. Please, Mom, you're the only person who can help us. I thought about saying no, thought about letting them face the consequences of their own choices, but he was my son, and despite everything, I still wanted to protect him. Let me talk to Bernard, I said. Bernard's response was immediate and sharp. Absolutely not, Adelaide. If you pay off their mortgage, you'll drain a significant portion of your liquid asset. What happens when you need that money for your own care? I have the rental income. I have savings, which you earned through 50 years of careful planning. Don't throw it away on their irresponsibility. He's my son. Bernard sighed, long and tired. Then at least let me structure this to protect you. If you're going to pay off their mortgage, the deed transfers to you. They can buy it back when they're financially stable. Won't that upset them? It's standard practice for large family loans. If they have a problem with it, they can go to a bank. Oh, wait, the bank already said no. So we structured it. Papers were drawn up. Preston came to my house with Vivian, both of them quiet and embarrassed. The documents covered my kitchen table: mortgage payoff, deed transfer, and a promissory note outlining the terms for them to buy the house back. You'll own the house until we can pay you back, Preston said, reading slowly. But we can live here and make improvements? Yes. Think of it as me holding it in trust for you. When you're back on your feet financially, we'll transfer it back. Vivian was reading over his shoulder, her face tight. How long do we have to pay you back? There's no deadline. When you can afford it, we'll discuss it. She looked like she wanted to argue, but Preston was already signing. His hand moved quickly, barely glancing at the fine print. He was distracted, stressed, just wanting this crisis over. Thank you, Mom, he said when everything was signed. We'll pay you back, I promise. 3 years passed. They never mentioned buying the house back. Never mentioned paying me back the $95,000 in loans. They just lived in the house, remodeled the kitchen, added landscaping, bought expensive furniture, and pretended they owned it all. And I let them pretend. Because I didn't need them to know. Didn't need to lord it over them. I'd helped my son when he needed it, and that felt like enough. Until Friday night. Until Vivian looked me in the eye and told me I was lucky to live here for free. Now, sitting in the beige room on Saturday morning, I looked at my phone. Bernard's text from last night. Papers ready. When do you want them? I typed back, Monday morning, early, before anyone else is awake. 3 dots appeared, then disappeared. Then, you're sure about this? More sure than I've ever been about anything. Good. It's about time. I spent the weekend in my room pretending to read, actually planning. Vivian knocked once on Saturday afternoon. We're going out for dinner. There's leftovers in the fridge if you're hungry. Thank you. Through my window, I watched them leave. Preston in slacks and a button-down. Vivian in a dress that probably cost more than I spent on groceries in 3 months. They didn't invite me. Didn't even consider it. Sunday was quiet. Preston worked in his office. Vivian went to brunch with Margot. I did my physical therapy exercises, slowly regaining strength. Getting ready. Monday morning, Bernard arrived at 7. Preston had already left for work. Vivian was still upstairs, probably doing her makeup routine that took 45 minutes. Bernard handed me a manila envelope. Lease agreement, rent notice. Fair market value for this size house in this neighborhood is $4,200 per month. First payment due December 1st. Standard lease terms, 1-year minimum, 30 days notice for changes, all utilities included in rent. I held the envelope, feeling the weight of it. Thank you. She's not going to take this well. I know. Preston might not either. I know that too. He squeezed my shoulder. Walter would be proud of you. After he left, I sat at the kitchen table with the envelope in front of me, poured myself coffee, waited. Vivian came downstairs at 8:30 wearing yoga pants and a tank top, her hair pulled back. She startled when she saw me at the table. "You're up early." "I need to talk to you about something." She poured herself coffee, not looking at me. "What?" "The house." Now she looked. "What about it?" "I own it. I've owned it for 3 years. I paid off your mortgage when you and Preston were facing foreclosure." Her face went blank, coffee mug frozen halfway to her lips. "What are you talking about? Preston didn't tell you?" I kept my voice level, calm. "When I paid off your mortgage, the deed transferred to me as collateral. This house belongs to me." She set down her mug with a sharp click. "That's not possible." "It's very possible. Bernard can show you the paperwork if you'd like to see it." "Preston would have told me." "Apparently he didn't." I pushed the envelope across the table. "This is a lease agreement and a rent notice. $4,200 per month, starting December 1st. Fair market value for a house this size." She stared at the envelope like it might bite her, then grabbed it with shaking hands and tore it open. I watched her face as she read, watched the color drain from her cheeks, watched her skin go from healthy pink to something closer to the color of old snow. "You can't do this." Her voice came out as a whisper. "I can. I am. This is our house." "No." I stood up slowly, my walker scraping the floor. "This is my house. You and Preston live here at my discretion. And as of December 1st, that means paying rent. Fair market rate. Or," I paused, "you can buy the house from me at current value, or you can find somewhere else to live." Her hands were shaking so hard the papers rattled. "Preston will never agree to this. Preston signed the deed transfer 3 years ago. He's aware of the arrangement, whether he explained it to you or not." She looked at me with pure, undiluted hatred. "You vindictive old woman." "No," I said quietly. "I'm a woman who knows her worth, and I'm done being told I'm lucky to live in my own house for free." I walked back to my room, my heart pounding but my steps steady. Behind me, I heard her start to cry, angry, frustrated sobs that held no regret, just rage at being outplayed. And I smiled, that small, calm smile that came from somewhere deep. The quiet reckoning had begun. Vivian's sobs turned to rage within minutes. I heard her in the kitchen, phone pressed to her ear, voice rising and falling in waves. "Preston, you need to come home, right now. Your mother has lost her mind." I sat on my bed, hands folded, and waited. The storm was coming. Let it come. Preston arrived 30 minutes later. I heard the front door slam, heard his voice in the kitchen, lower than Vivian's, but tight with confusion. "What are you talking about? What papers?" "Read them," Vivian's voice cracked. "Just read them." Silence. Long enough that I imagined Preston standing there, papers in hand, his face going through the same transformation Vivian's had. Confusion to shock to understanding. Then his footsteps in the hallway, a knock on my door, soft but urgent. "Mom, can I come in?" "It's open." He came in holding the lease agreement, his face pale. He looked younger suddenly, like the boy who used to climb into my lap after bad dreams. "Is this real?" "Yes." "You own our house?" "I paid off your mortgage 3 years ago. The deed transferred to me. You signed the papers, Preston, Métier. You were there." He sat down heavily in the chair by my dresser. "I remember signing something. There was so much paperwork, and I was so stressed. I thought it was just, I don't know what I thought, but I didn't know you actually owned it." "Did you tell Vivian about the arrangement?" His silence was answer enough. "Preston," I kept my voice gentle, I've given you $95,000 in loans over the past few years. You haven't paid back a penny. I paid off your $380,000 mortgage. I've watched you and Vivian buy designer clothes and take expensive vacations while telling me I'm lucky to live here for free. That was wrong of her. The comment at dinner, I should have said something. Should have, but you didn't. He rubbed his face with both hands. What do you want us to do? Pay rent, fair market value, or buy the house back from me, or find somewhere else to live. Those are your options. $4,200 a month? Mom, we can't afford that. Then how can you afford Tuscany? How can you afford that car in your driveway? How can you afford wine that costs $40 a bottle? He had no answer. From the kitchen, I heard Vivian's voice again, sharp and insistent. Preston, don't let her manipulate you. I'm not manipulating anyone, I said quietly. I'm asserting my rights as a property owner. This is business, Preston, pure and simple. This is family. Is it? I met his eyes. When was the last time you treated me like family? When was the last time you invited me to dinner with you instead of leaving me to eat alone? When was the last time you asked about my day, my health, my life, beyond whether I was being too loud or taking up too much space? His face crumpled. I'm sorry. I got so caught up in work and Vivian and everything else. I didn't realize. You didn't want to realize. It was easier not to see. Vivian appeared in the doorway, eyes red and swollen. This is insane. We're calling a lawyer. Go ahead, I said calmly. Bernard Hastings has handled all my legal work for 30 years. Every document is ironclad. You'll waste money on a lawyer who'll tell you exactly what I'm telling you now. We'll fight this. You'll lose. She looked at Preston. Say something. Don't just sit there and let her do this to us. Preston stared at the floor. She's right, Viv. She owns the house. I signed the papers. You what? 3 years ago, when she paid off the mortgage, I signed everything over to her as collateral. Vivian's face went through several emotions at once. Betrayal, fury, panic. And you never told me? I didn't think it mattered. I thought once we got back on our feet, we'd buy it back and... Got back on our feet? Her voice went shrill. We're drowning, Preston. We're living off credit cards and your mother's handouts, and you've been letting me think we own this house the whole time? I didn't mean to... Oh my God. She turned in a circle, hands in her hair. This is a nightmare. I stood up, leaning on my walker. You have until December 1st to decide. Pay the rent, buy the house, or move out. I'll need your decision in writing by November 15th. That's only 2 weeks, Vivian shouted. That's 2 weeks to figure out what you can actually afford. I suggest you start with a budget. Preston's phone rang. He glanced at it, then silenced it. Mom, please, can we talk about this? Work something out? What would you like to work out? I don't know, maybe we can pay you back gradually, the loans and everything, and you can let us stay here without rent until we're caught up? I looked at my son, saw the boy I'd raised, the man he'd become, the choices he'd made, saw how Vivian had shaped him, bent him, made him into someone who thought asking for more favors was a reasonable solution. No, I said simply, I'm done giving, Preston. It's time for you to stand on your own feet. Vivian grabbed his arm. I said, yeah. Come on, we're calling my mother. She'll know what to do. They left my room together, Vivian already dialing, Preston trailing behind like a scolded child. I heard them in the kitchen again, then heard the garage door open and close. They were gone. I sat back down on my bed and exhaled slowly. My hands were shaking now, adrenaline finally catching up. I'd done it. I'd stood my ground. I'd stopped being small. My phone buzzed. Bernard. How'd it go? About as well as expected, they're calling lawyers. Let them. They won't find one willing to take the case. Your paperwork is bulletproof. Thank you, Bernard. Thank Walter. He's the one who set all this up. After we hung up, I sat in the quiet beige room and thought about Walter. Imagined him in his work boots and flannel shirt, sawdust in his hair, smiling that gentle smile of his. I told you to hold on to your dignity, Addie. Glad you finally listened. Outside, the afternoon sun broke through the clouds, sending light streaming through my window. It felt like a sign, like Walter watching over me, telling me I'd done the right thing. But this wasn't over yet. Vivian wouldn't give up easily. She'd fight, manipulate, try every angle to keep control, and Preston, my son, my only child, would have to choose his mother or his wife, truth or comfort, responsibility or denial. I didn't know yet which he'd choose, but I knew one thing for certain. I wasn't backing down. Not this time. Not ever again. They came back 3 hours later with Vivian, his mother, Constance, and sister Margot. I heard them in the living room, voices overlapping, strategies being discussed. Constance's voice rose above the others, sharp, authoritative, used to getting her way. This is elder abuse, she declared. We'll report her to Adult Protective Services. I walked out of my room, Walker tapping against the hardwood. 4 faces turned to me. Constance was a tall woman with silver hair pulled back severely, wearing a suit that probably cost more than my monthly rental income from all 3 properties. Margot stood beside her, arms crossed, expression hostile. Preston and Vivian sat on the couch, looking exhausted. Elder abuse requires proof of harm, I said calmly. I'm the one asserting property rights I've held for 3 years. If anything, I'm the one who's been taken advantage of. Constance's eyes narrowed. You can't just kick a family out onto the street. I'm not kicking anyone out. I'm offering 3 options: pay fair market rent, purchase the property, or relocate. Those are reasonable terms for any landlord-tenant relationship. Landlord-tenant? Margot laughed, but it sounded forced. You're his mother. Which is why I've been extraordinarily patient. Any other landlord would have addressed this situation years ago. We're calling our lawyer, Constance said. Please do. My lawyer, Bernard Hastings, will be happy to provide copies of all relevant documents. The deed transfer, the mortgage payoff receipt, the promissory note your son-in-law signed. Everything is documented and legal. Preston finally spoke. Mom, what if we can't afford the rent? I looked at my son, really looked at him, saw the man who'd stopped visiting, stopped calling, stopped treating me like I mattered, saw the choices he'd made, the life he'd built on my money while pretending I was the one receiving charity. Then you'll need to make different choices, Preston. Sell the luxury car, stop eating at expensive restaurants, cancel the wine club, live within your means like your father and I did. That's not fair, Vivian said. We deserve to enjoy our lives. On your own dime, I replied, Mom. Not mine. Constance stepped forward, trying to intimidate me with her height. If you proceed with this, you'll destroy your relationship with your son. If my relationship with my son can only survive while I'm being used and disrespected, then it's already destroyed. The words hung in the air. Preston flinched like I'd slapped him. I loved your father for 50 years, I continued, my voice steady. We built everything from nothing. We saved every penny, made every sacrifice, protected everything we created. And I've watched that legacy get drained away by people who think money grows on trees and family means someone you can take from without giving anything back. We gave you a place to live, Vivian's voice went shrill again. In my own house, how generous. Margot started to say something, but Constance held up her hand. She was studying me now, reassessing. How much to buy the house? Current market value, based on comparable sales in this neighborhood, approximately $650,000. Vivian gasped. That's robbery! That's what you'd pay on the open market. Actually, I'm giving you a discount by not requiring a bidding war or realtor fees. We don't have that kind of money, Preston said quietly. Then you have 2 other options. Constance pulled Vivian and Margot aside, speaking in low, urgent tones. Preston stayed on the couch, staring at his hands. After a moment, he looked up at me. "I'm sorry," he said. "For all of it. The way we treated you, the money we never paid back, the things Vivian said. I'm sorry, Mom." The apology was real. I could hear it in his voice, see it in his eyes. But apologies don't erase actions. They don't refund money, or restore dignity, or give back the 10 months I spent making myself invisible in my own house. "I know you are," I said gently. "But sorry doesn't fix this, Preston. Only action does." Constance turned back to us. "We need time to explore our options. Financial arrangements don't happen overnight. You have until November 15th. That's 2 weeks. That's not enough time. Then you should start immediately." They left shortly after, Constance herding everyone out like a general organizing a retreat. Preston looked back at me once from the doorway, his face full of regret and confusion. I didn't look away, didn't soften, just met his eyes steadily until he turned and left. The house fell quiet. I stood in the living room surrounded by furniture I'd paid for in a house I owned and felt something shift inside me. Not triumph, not revenge, just peace. The peace that comes from finally standing in your own truth. Over the next week, Preston and Vivian barely spoke to me. They moved around the house like ghosts, having urgent whispered conversations behind closed doors. I heard Preston on the phone with banks, like trying to get approved for a mortgage to buy the house. Heard Vivian crying in their bedroom late at night. I almost felt sorry for them. Almost. Bernard called daily with updates. They hired a lawyer. He reviewed the documents and told them they don't have a case. Good. Vivian's mother tried to file an elder abuse complaint. Adult Protective Services came by to check on you. How did that go? The investigator took one look at your medical records, your bank statements, and the deed paperwork and closed the case. She said, and I quote, "This woman is sharper than half the people I work with. There's no abuse here." I smiled. Tell her I appreciate her thoroughness. November 15th arrived. Preston knocked on my door at 8 in the morning. "Mom, can I come in?" "Yes." He looked like he hadn't slept, and dark circles under his eyes, hair uncombed, wearing the same clothes I'd seen yesterday. "We can't afford the rent. We applied for mortgages at 5 different banks, and they all said no. Our credit is shot." "What are you going to do?" "We're moving out. Vivian's mother has a rental property in another state. She's offering us below market rent until we can get back on our feet." I nodded. "When?" "We need 60 days. Is that okay?" "That's fine. I'll have Bernard draw up the notice." He sat down heavily in my chair. "I really am sorry, Mom. For everything. I let Vivian's spending get out of control. I let her treat you badly. I stopped being the son you raised." "You're still that son, Preston. You just forgot for a while." "Can we?" His voice broke. "Can we fix this? Eventually?" I looked at my son, my only child, the boy I'd nursed and raised and loved for 43 years. Saw Walter in the shape of his face, heard echoes of the man I'd married in the tone of his voice. "Yes," I said quietly. "But it starts with you learning to stand on your own feet, making choices based on what you can afford, not what you want, taking responsibility for your life instead of expecting other people to rescue you." "I understand." "Do you, though? Because understanding and doing are different things." He nodded slowly. "I'll prove it to you, however long it takes." After he left, I called Keisha, my physical therapist. "I'm ready to go home." "You're home? Are you sure?" "More sure than I've ever been." She came the next day and evaluated me, watched me navigate stairs, get in and out of bed, manage my daily activities. "You've made excellent progress. I think you're ready." Bernard arranged everything. Within a week, I was back in the house Walter and I built, sleeping in our bed, Cooking in our kitchen, sitting in Walter's old recliner. Everything smelled like home, old wood and lemon polish and memories. Preston and Vivian moved out on schedule. I didn't watch them go, just stayed in my house, looking through old photo albums, remembering who Walter and I had been before money and family complicated everything. 6 months later, Preston called. Mom, I got a promotion at work. Vivian got a better job too. We're doing okay. I'm glad. Can I come visit? Just me? I'd like that. He came alone on a Saturday afternoon. We sat at my kitchen table drinking coffee, talking carefully at first, then more easily. He told me about his life, his work, the marriage counseling he and Vivian were attending. She didn't understand that you can't just take from family without giving back, he said. She grew up differently, where parents just gave and never expected anything. She thought that's how it worked. But you knew better. I raised you to understand the value of things. I did, I just forgot. We talked for 3 hours. Before he left, he handed me an envelope. It's not much, just $500. But it's the start of paying you back. I looked at the check, felt its weight. Not the money itself, but what it represented. Understanding, growth, responsibility. Thank you, Preston. He hugged me tight, and for a moment I smelled sawdust and wood smoke and felt Walter's presence wrapping around us both. I love you, Mom. I'm going to make this right. I know you will. After he left, I sat in Walter's recliner and thought about everything that had happened. The fall, the recovery, the humiliation, the reckoning, the resolution. All of it leading to this moment of quiet peace. I'd learned something Walter had tried to teach me years ago. Kindness is not weakness, and silence is not surrender. The quietest people aren't powerless. They're just watching, waiting, choosing their moment. And when that moment comes, when they finally stand up and speak their truth, the whole world shifts. Dignity is priceless. Self-respect is non-negotiable. And family means mutual love and respect, not one person giving while others take. If you've ever felt invisible in spaces you created, remember Adelaide's story. If you've ever been told you're lucky to be treated with basic decency, remember you deserve so much more. If you've ever been made to feel small by people who should lift you up, remember that quiet strength is still strength. Know your worth, stand in your truth, and never, ever let anyone make you feel grateful for being disrespected in your own house. If this story moved you, if Adelaide's journey resonated with you, I'd love to hear about it. Drop a comment telling me what lesson you're taking away from this. Share this story with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you are never too old, never too quiet, never too kind to stand up for yourself. Subscribe for more stories about quiet justice, family dynamics, and the power of knowing your worth. Because sometimes the most powerful revenge isn't loud or dramatic. Sometimes it's just standing firm in your truth and watching everything change around you. Until next time, hold on to your dignity. Walter was right. The land holds on to you, but only if you hold on to yourself first.